Dr. Ton. Let's get into a couple of questions specifically about the API community. I'm wondering, from your perspective, how has that community advanced notions about mental health? Through the work that we're doing with Brother We Well, we've learned from our API brothers that there's a lot of pressure on them because some of those notions haven't advanced. And I'd like you to touch on those a little bit. We have already, but very specifically about your community. Which of those beliefs are still intact? Which ones have faded away? And talk about some of the positive changes that may have come about over the years, if you can.
Yeah, I think that there's still quite a bit of stigma in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Just to give you some numbers, just straight off, Asian Pacific Islanders are 3 times less likely to seek mental health. So we're the community that is least likely to seek mental health treatment. Some of those are related to, we don't want to bring shame to our family. Having mental health conditions may be perceived as others have said, being weak, of complaining. So going to therapy and talking about your problems can be seen as complaining about your family, complaining about your loved ones, complaining about your conditions, which in many API cultures is frowned upon. Bringing dishonor to your family, and then there's the karmic or the spiritual aspect too. That if you have a mental health condition, it's something that your parents did that you sort of inherited, and it's manifesting that moral sin, or maybe ancestors generations ago as well. So that sense of family, which is often a powerful resilience factor within API communities, can have the other side of the coin being a pressure to not shame the family and cause the family to lose standing. But I think that things have changed, and we are seeing some improvements. We have wonderful API leaders, elders in the community, faith leaders, community advocates that are really sharing the importance of talking about these things. I think as well, the recognition of racism, stigma, and trauma helps to place some of the major root causes of mental illness, mental health conditions outside of the moral and individual person to the inequitable circumstances that Asian Pacific Islanders and I would say other communities as well have experienced. We know that trauma underlies a lot of mental health distress, and this growing recognition that is happening, I think really brings a sense of relief and confirmation of the experience that API members have about the distress. I'll say that to say a little bit about the anti-Asian and Pacific Islander hate. There's been a rise, a 19,000% rise in hate reports of hate crime in the past year. And just for many of us, wow. This past week was a week of celebration of Lunar New Year's. And we've been warned by officials not to go out, or to be very careful to go out, because there's been a series of assaults on Asian American Pacific Islander elders. And that hits home to us because our elders are so revered in our community. And that kind of racism has really heightened people's anxiety and depression. There's also been fears, especially early on in the pandemic, that for Asian Americans who wore masks, they experience being discriminated against more. So you can see how that actually affected their ability to protect themselves and their families. So I think that while there has been a lot of work that's been done, certainly in these recent times, the level of stress And fear in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community has grown by leaps and bounds.
You've really you read my mind and got right into, you weaved my second question right into that first question, Dr. Ton. So now I understand why people speak so highly of you, sir. I'm meeting you tonight for the first time. I really appreciated that answer, because you got at some of those, the incredible underutilization of mental health services among the API community. I forget, I think it was you, Sheree, who began to touch on the blatant violence and racism toward that API community. I was going to ask you about that too. So I appreciate the panel's help in keeping us rolling and keeping us on schedule today. Thanks for your thoughtfulness there, Dr. Ton. Dr. Haggins, you're up next, if you would, or if you're ready for us. I want to know if you'll speak to the overwhelming lack, and I'm going to try not to reveal my own bias in this, the overwhelming lack of programs and services addressing the mental health needs of the African American community. I'm talking about services and places being culturally congruent, being affirming. We've talked about them already. How do we fix this? It's an enormous gap between what we need and where we're at. So how do we bridge that gap, if you will? And can you talk about that? I'm not just talking about individuals, but I'm talking about jurisdictions and systems and even counties that are falling short of what we need. Can you wade us into these waters and help us unpack this a little bit?
Sure. But what a big question, right? That is huge. So let me just start with this quote that I think aligns with what you said. And it's by C. Vestal. And they said, being Black is bad for your health and pervasive racism is the cause. Right?
Wow.
That being Black is bad for your health and pervasive racism is the cause. And so when we think about that, we're talking about institutional systemic issues that have been going on, as you mentioned, for hundreds of years. So I don't have, right, in the few minutes that I have to respond to your question, the answer to what that looks like. What I do know is that we need to keep doing some of the work that's already in place. Being able to, as Dr. Ton was speaking about, understand the impact of racism, and in particular anti-Black racism on Black bodies and our experiences intergenerationally and collectively. And so that may mean conversations like this, understanding education around it, continuing to collect and look at numbers and track data around what is shifting and changing in terms of health and care and access and so forth. I think also being aware that there are services that are needed specifically for Black people. One of the things that I do is I'm a founder, as you mentioned at the beginning, of Safe Black Space, community healing circles, which is a support and a service specifically for people of African ancestry, recognizing as we're talking about this kind of traumatic history that is so present for us. And so there are times in which, again, we may need someone who looks like us or looks like me, who gets me to be a part of that healing process. And so part of it, again, like I said, is understanding at all these different systems and levels. There needs to be understanding of these issues and then education around it. And then, as I was saying earlier, being able to expand the workforce so that it's representative of people across the board, right, in terms of ethnicity and difference. What else? There's probably more I could say, but
that was quite a lot. That was a great survey of everything that needs to be done. We've got our work cut out for us. That's pretty clear to me. Would you agree?
We do. I want to add one more thing, if you don't mind. One of my mentors, Dr. Ethiopia Jackson, she's a current president of the Association of Black Psychologists. She often talks about or has used this phrase of we are our own medicine. We are each other's best medicine. And so kind of understanding that is part of the process as well, that there are, of course, experts and professionals that can provide assistance and support as we're talking about mental health and stigma, but also recognizing that there's incredible power in our interpersonal relationships and our connections in terms of community and families and with each other as well. So as we heal ourselves, we can heal each other.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.